Hey viewers, welcome back to the channel. We are diving into a bold and controversial statement from President Donald Trump that is sparking intense debate across the nation. In a recent speech, Trump reacts to news that the Supreme Court may hear arguments on ending birthright citizenship, and he's framing the entire situation around one explosive concept: slavery. He claims the 14th Amendment, widely known for granting citizenship to anyone born on US soil, was never meant to apply to modern immigration, but rather to address the legacy of slavery after the Civil War. And now he's calling for lawyers and the public to look at it through that historical lens. But will that argument hold up in court or with the American people? And how are legal scholars, immigration advocates, and everyday citizens responding to this fairy take? We are breaking it all down. One Trump said, why it matters, and what the response has been so far. You won't want to miss this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
Time ago, the Supreme Court agreed to hear oral arguments in the case about ending birthright citizenship. How confident are you that the court will rule in your favor and allow that order to end birthright citizenship to go forward?
Well, you're just telling me that for the first time. I am so happy. I think the case has been so misunderstood. That case, birthright citizenship, is about slavery. If you look at the details of it, the signings of it, everything else, that case is all about slavery. And if you view it from that standpoint, people understand it. But for some reason, lawyers don't talk about it, the news doesn't talk about it. That's not about tourists coming in and touching a piece of sand and all of a sudden they're a citizenship. They're a citizen. That is all about slavery. And even look at the dates on which it was signed. It was right at that era, right after the Civil War. And if you look at it that way, the case is an easy case to win. And I hope the lawyers talk about birthright, citizenship, and slavery, because that's what it was all about. And it was it was meant to be positive. And they use it now instead, not for slavery, they use it for people that come into our country and they walk in and all of a sudden they become citizens and they pay a lot of money to different cartels and others. It's all about slavery, and if you look at it that way, we should win that case.
So like he said, that's about us, slaves, that birthright citizenship. Everybody else, y'all not supposed to be here. And guess what? I'm a descendant of the slaves. My great-great-grandparents, my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my mama, all of them was born and raised on plantations. I'm talking about pick cotton. My mama used to tell me about once she got up in the 6th grade, she had to drop out of school so she can pick cotton to help take care of her family. They had to walk miles to school. They had to rotate who went to school because they couldn't afford shoes for everybody. She told me about how they used to get whipped with water hoses and stuff, with whips and stuff. My grandma, you know what I'm saying? My great-grandma. Guess what? My family was already here in America. We didn't even come over here on boats and stuff. We was already here. Know how I know? Because they kept stuff. And it's been passed along generation through generation. My generation of my family, we the first ones to be born free of plantations. The first ones to be born that didn't have to pick cotton. That was free to go to school. Free to be us. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's crazy. Yeah. What my 40 acres in a mule?
American Indians versus the Native Americans. Let's end this debate for once and for all. American Indians previously enslaved were freed in 1865 and given birthright citizenship. Okay, now let's look at this article that I have pulled up. On June 2nd, 1924, Congress enacted the Indian Citizenship Act, which granted citizenship to all Native Americans born in the United States. We are two completely different people. We have birthright citizenship. You do not. You are native to the continent of America, but you are not indigenous to the American land that is now governed by the United States. And you did not receive your citizenship until 1924. We, the so-called black people, the indigenous nation of America, received our birthright citizenship in 1865. So how could we want to be someone who don't have nothing? We don't want to be you. We want the respect that we earned and deserve. And it will be given to us. And the reason why the colonizers said that they wanted you guys over here is because that they believed that you would keep their traditions and that you would keep their morals. And you have proved them right. I love y'all so much, but we have got to stop calling the ancestors slaves. They were enslaved. They are not slaves. Slave is a noun that reduces you to status. Enslaved is an adjective that acknowledges the forceful bondage that was placed on a group of people. So to be like, oh, my family is a slave, that's not true. A lot of y'all are French Creole people who have a lot of wealth tied to your bloodline. You just haven't tapped into it yet. So you're not a slave and you didn't come from slaves. Your people, rich or poor, were enslaved. We take our power back when we take our words back. They're not going to change what they say unless we tell them to. Don't call me that. Don't refer to me as that. And we could start with slave and black, because you are not those things. You are either indigenous to North America, the land that's now governed by the United States, and that was taken from you through colonization, or you are indigenous to North Africa, and that land was taken from you through the Arabization of that land. But you are not a slave.
Donald Trump really just said that birthright citizenship was meant for the children of slaves, that it wasn't meant for everyone to come over here by plane or across our borders to just come to America. But I was raised in a history class that taught actual history, where we were told that America was the melting pot of the world, and that the American dream inspired people from all over the world to come here to have a better life. And at one point, we were focused on growth. You can tell that in the cities that we live in. Chicago, New York, Seattle, LA, all of these cities where there was major growth. And it was at the expense of the indigenous who lived here. But we did grow this country, and we grew it together from people all over the world. My ancestors come from France, Ireland, Scotland, and London in my own genealogy. We have no growth because at some point in our history, we started looking at each other with fear. We started looking at our differences not as benefits to our culture, but as something that just because it's not understood, it's not valued. But it is the multicultural experience that the United States was that got us here. And you can look at our history and tell when we fucking petered off, when we stopped growing. I was thinking about this the other day. What was the last thing where we built where we're like, oh shit, that's fucking cool. Hey world, check this out. What's the last thing? The literal only thing that I can think of that's not a sports complex that's meant to keep us distracted and entertained is the Sphere in Las Vegas. But other than that, we haven't been improving our infrastructure, our roadways, our means of fast travel. We haven't been improving anything because we're too busy being slaves and being gaslit into thinking that we're better than the rest of the world. When I just watched a video the other day of Australian money, there's fucking braille on each dollar telling the blind what bill they have. It's color coded, it doesn't crumple, it doesn't rip, and it's pretty fucking cool. And I'm like, America could never, because you know what, here in America, you're blind, ew, it's wrong. I had a video come up across my feed the other day. Empathy is a sin. Excuse me, what? We have a president in office right now that made Bibles with the Bill of Rights and the Constitution in them. Has he ever read a fucking Bible to know that that's blasphemy? That Jesus would come in cracking fucking whips and flipping tables? No, but you know what? People are like, oh, like he's not the literal Antichrist. We got problems over here. We got problems over here. And we don't need to fight each other because guess what, bitch? It's the melting pot of the world. Take your experiences, share them with me. I'll take my experiences, share them with you. And together, we'll be better. If you have hate in your heart for someone that is different than you, that doesn't look like you, or doesn't speak your language, you're the problem. Because something about that makes you feel insecure. Makes you feel insecure. I don't feel insecure when I'm in the nail salon and I don't understand what's going on. I don't give a shit. She's doing me right. You know, and at least she can enjoy her work day. We don't have to have fear for other people. Birthright citizenship is a core belief of the American people that built this country to what it is. And it's important and it's valuable. And I tell you what, you wash this country to be nothing. And it is going to be fucking miserable here. Miserable. The food's gonna suck. It's not gonna be seasoned. Everybody's gonna be fucking grumpy and trying to shame you on some shit. And there's gonna be no books. It's going to be, children are supposed to be seen and not heard. Go outside till dark. Bring back the cocaine so I can clean my house. And women can't have bank accounts. Does that sound like a good time?
So, President Donald Trump has once again brought national attention to the debate surrounding birthright citizenship in an unscripted and impassioned response to the news that the Supreme Court may consider a case that could potentially end birthright citizenship. Trump laid out an argument that is both historical, grounded, and highly controversial. He didn't just call for a revaluation of the 14th Amendment, he reframed the entire context of it around slavery, and that pivot is what has people talking. Let's break this down. Trump stands by expressing genuine surprise and optimism over the news that the court may hear the case. His tone quickly shifts from excitement to a pointed critical of how the issue has been understood or, in his view, misunderstood. He makes the argument that the core of the birthright citizenship clauses was never intended to apply to model-day immigration scenarios, what he refers to as tourists touching a piece of sand and suddenly acquiring citizenship, but rather it was a provision meant exclusively for the descendants of enslaved people in the aftermath of the Civil War. That claims raises a number of important legal, historical, and political questions, and if we are going to assess the impact of what he said, he needs to look at each other one of those in detail. First, the legal foundation. Birthright citizenship is rooted in the 14th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, ratified in 1868. The relevant language reads, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The key legal phrases here, subject to the jurisdiction therefore, has been the focal point of decades of debate. What does that clause really mean? Historically, the Supreme Court addressed this in the 1898 case United States v. King Act. In that case, the court ruled that a child born in the U.S. to Chinese immigrants who themselves are not citizens was in fact a U.S. citizen by birthright. That decision has served as a legal cornerstone for interpreting the 14th Amendment ever since. So when Trump says the case is an essay case to win, if viewed through the lens of slavery, he's essentially challenging over a century of legal precedent. He's arguing that the 14th Amendment should be interpreted much more narrowly, that it was meant to apply only to free slaves and their descendants, not to the children of immigrants, particularly those who are undocumented or visiting. This brings us to the historical framing. Trump's statement lands heavily on the context in which the 14th Amendment was written. Immediately after the Civil War, he argues that it was a corrective measure for the injustice of slavery and should not be extrapolated to cover their scenarios, and he's not entirely wrong about the origins. The amendment was indeed crafted during the Reconstruction, and its authors were focused on securing legal rights and protections from formerly enslaved people. But the issues lies in the scope of that protection. Histories and constitutional scholars generally agree that while the amendment was born out of the need to address slavery, its language, particularly the use of all persons, was intentionally broad. The Reconstruction era Congress could have written something more specific to freed slaves, but they didn't. They chose to broader guarantee one that applied to all persons born in the US and subject to jurisdiction. Trump, however, is pushing for a reinterpretation based not just on the text, but on his reading of the amendment intent. He wants the court to re-evaluate not just what the word says, but why they were written in the first place and who they were meant to protect. Now, let's talk about the political angle, because this is not just a constitutional debate, it's a political statement too. Trump is not new to the issue of birthright citizenship. Back in his presidency, he floated the idea of ending it through executive order, a move that drew immediate criticism from legal scholars, lawmakers, and civil rights groups. But his recent comments show that he hasn't moved away from the position. In fact, he's doubling down. And politically, his speech accomplishes a few things. First, it's relative a segment of the Republican base that is deeply concerned about immigration by framing birthright citizenship as a loophole exploited by undocumented immigrants or even by a cartels, as he mentioned. He taps into a long-standing anxiety about broader control and national identity. Second, it aligns him with a growing movement of the right that is skeptical of long-standing constitutional interpretation. This is a part of a broader trend, a willingness to challenge precedent in the hopes of reshaping the judiciary to reflect a more conservative reading of the Constitution. Third, and perhaps most strategically, Trump shifts the focus away from immigration onto history by tying birthright citizenship to slavery. He attempts to reframe the moral high ground. He's saying, in effect, this isn't about discrimination, it's about restoring the original moral purpose of the law. But that historical move is not without consequences. Civil rights groups have already pushed back hard. Legal scholars have warned that narrowing the 14th Amendment could open the door to all kinds of unintended consequences, including challenges to the citizenship status of people born here decades ago. Immigration advocates say that ending birthright citizenship would create a class of stateless children born in the US but with no legal home, which could violate international law. And public response divided as expected. Some see Trump's comment as a bold attempt to correct what they view as a constitutional overreach. Others see it as a dangerous distortion of American history and attack on the very idea of equal rights under the law. Social media, as usual, lit up with reaction ranging from passionate support to outright condemnation. One point that deserves a special attention is how Trump critiques both lawyers and the media for failing to talk about the slavery contest. That is a deliberate move. He's painting the legal establishment and the press as out of touch with the real meaning of the Constitution, as people who are hiding the truth or unwilling to engage with it. That kind of history is classic Trump, and it plays directly into his long-running theme of being the outsider who sees what elites won't see. So where does this go from here? If the Supreme Court does take up the case, it will likely become one of the most significant constitutional battles in a generation. The implication would be massive, not just for immigration, for how we interpret constitutional rights more broadly. And Trump, whether or not he's in office, will remain at the center of that conversation. In the meantime, his comment serves as a preview of what's to come in the 2024 election cycle. We are going to hear a lot more about the 14th Amendment, about citizenship, about immigration, and about who gets defined what it means to be an American. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe for more deep dives on the biggest stories, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you agree with Trump's interpretation with the 14th Amendment, or do you think it's a misreading of constitutional history? Let's talk about it. Catch you in the next one.